Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. So for today's class, we're going to be discussing market structure. So first of all, what is a market structure? This simply is the nature and degree of competition among firms which are actually existing within the same industry. So we have four types of market structures, but in order to determine what type of market structure we're discussing, we need to ask certain questions. So we need to ask questions like, so the first question we need to ask is, how much control over prices do these firms have? The second question we need to ask is, how many firms are actually competing within the same industry or within the same market? The third question we need to ask is, how large or what are the sizes of each of these firms competing within the same industry? Firstly, we need to ask, what are the characteristics of the products within this market? Then the last question we need to ask is, how easy is it for new firms to either enter or for old firms to exit the market? Now, the four type of market structures we have are perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and lastly, we have what we call monopoly. Here I have a warm-up question for you all. Is monopoly actually legal in Nigeria? Although we're going to look at what monopoly is all about further down in the notes, but this is basically just a question you need to keep in mind when we're going through monopoly. When we go through monopoly, you need to ask yourself, is this actually legal in Nigeria? Now, the first market structure we're going to be looking at is perfect competition. What is perfect competition? Now, for you to say these firms are in a perfect competition or this group of markets are in a perfect competition, they need to meet 5 conditions. Number 1, we need to have a large number of buyers and sellers. So for this perfect competition, we're going to use the example of salt. So for instance, if you want to buy salt today, you don't need to go through like a rocket science to start to decipher where to get salt, how much will the salt be sold in this firm or in this market, in that store. No. There's so many buyers and so many sellers of salt, right? So today if you decide you want to just quickly get salt, you know that whenever you just stop by most of the stores around you, you would easily get salt. So there's a large number of buyers and a huge number of sellers. Now, the second condition is buyers and sellers must deal in identical products. So if you want to buy salt, you don't need to start thinking, where would I get this particular type of salt that I actually like? Because if you buy salt here, let's say in Nasarawa, it's going to be the same type of salt in Lagos, the same type of salt in the UK. So the salts all taste the same. Salt tastes like salt, right? The products are identical, even though the packaging might be different, but the content is the same everywhere. Now, the third condition is buyers and sellers act independently. So the buyers and the sellers do not need to form like a union, or they don't need to have a private conversation on how they are going to sell the salt or how they are going to buy the salt. Everyone is an independent buyer or independent seller. Now, the fourth condition is buyers and sellers are well informed. Everyone has complete information, right? You can't cheat me when I go to buy salt, because I can easily go down to the next store and ask how much their salt is. I can easily go down to the next 2 stores and ask how much their salt is. And all I have to do is buy from the cheapest person, right? So you can't cheat me because everyone have information. The fifth condition is buyers and sellers are free to enter into, conduct, or get out of business. So if I decide to start selling salt today, I don't need to go and take permission from the government to say, okay, I want to start selling salt in maybe Orozo market or in Maraba market or Nyanya market. I don't need anybody's permission. I can easily just walk into the market, find a space and start selling. I don't need to go take permission from anyone. Say for instance, I'm selling salt, right? And tomorrow I decide to start selling tomatoes. I don't need to get anybody's consent to stop selling salt and start selling tomatoes. I don't need to get anyone's consent to now start to stop selling tomatoes and start selling orange 3 days later. it's a perfect competition. I can enter the market whenever I want, I can conduct business whenever I want, and I can get out of the business whenever I want. So if a product meets these 5 conditions, you say there is perfect competition in that market. Now we have what we call imperfect condition. So imperfect competition. So once a market lacks one or more of the 5 conditions we have just discussed, it's no longer a perfect competition, right? It now becomes an imperfect competition. And under imperfect competition, we have monopolistic competition, we have oligopoly and monopoly. So now let's take a look at what monopolistic competition is all about first of all. Now, monopolistic competition, it meets all the conditions of a perfect competition except for identical products. So every other condition that is embedded in the perfect competition also exists in monopolistic competition except one, which is identical products. So now these firms can actually monopolize a little part of the market through the following means. One, product differentiation. So they can make their product seem special. Even though it's nothing special, there's nothing special about it. Right? They can make it seem special. Say for instance, you're selling markers. Let's say whiteboard markers are the same, right? It's ink, they are the same everywhere. But I come out and I give a special advertisement to mine, like, oh, you can turn the whiteboard marker into like a paper ink. You can use it right on the board and you can use it to write on your book, right? So I've made it seem special. Or I can say, even if you open the marker down for 3 days, it wouldn't dry up. Now, it's the same, it's basically the same as others, but I have come out and done an advertisement to make it seem special. So because of this, I can actually sell my marker at a different price. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. I can now sell it at a different price. Then we have what we call non-price competition. Now, this is also the use of advertisement, giveaways, promotions to just, get people to know about your business and then boom the business. Now, the next imperfect competition we have is oligopoly. Now, oligopoly is a situation where we have very few sellers, but they are large enough to dominate the industry. So this any firm within this market can cause a change in output, sales, or prices, and they tend to control up to 2/3 of the industry. So let's take for instance Pepsi and Coca-Cola. They control about, let's say, 65% of the market, right? So they are few, but then they dominate the industry. They have power over the industry. Now, in oligopoly, they tend to use interdependent behaviors to keep having control over that market. So when we talk of interdependent behavior, we're talking of things like collusion and price wars. So for collusion, it's something like a formal agreement which they use to set prices or limit outputs, acting as one company. So say Pepsi and Coca-Cola come together, right? And they say, okay, we're going to increase our prices next year by 50%. So not just Coca-Cola, but Pepsi as well, because they are the ones dominating the market. So even if other companies decide, okay, we're going to reduce our prices, no one is going to care because those Pepsi and Coca-Cola are the main soft drink companies. So if Pepsi increases their price by 50% and people say, oh, Pepsi is too expensive, let's go to Coca-Cola products. When you go to Coca-Cola products, you're going to see that they've also increased their prices by 50%. So you have no choice but to just pick one, or you just pick any one of your choice, right? Because they are working together to keep having control over that market and also increasing their prices, or they can say we're not going to produce as much as before. So Pepsi and Coca-Cola comes together and say, okay, we're going to reduce our production output. We're going to reduce output by, let's say, 50,000 crates. So instead of producing 100,000 crates of soft drinks, we're going to start producing only 50,000. So when they start producing 50,000, it means the supply has reduced, right? The supply of that product has reduced, but our demand is still the same. So once supply reduces and demand is still high, what happens? Prices would go up, right? So that's how they can also make prices go up while reducing output. The second thing we have is called what we call price wars. So now this is when one firm lowers prices and other firms just have no choice but to follow in a series of price cuts, which results in unusually low price. So say for instance, Coca-Cola reduces the prices of its drinks. Coca-Cola is already dominating the industry. So if it reduces its prices, even people that were buying maybe Pepsi products or other soft drink products would rush to Coca-Cola, right? Now, other firms have no choice but to reduce their own prices as well. So once one firm reduces its prices or lowers its prices, other firms just have no choice but to also lower their prices. So that's what we call price wars. Lastly, we have what we call monopoly. Now, monopoly is a situation where there is just one seller of a particular product. There's just one seller. Now, under monopoly, we have what we call legal monopolies. Under legal monopolies, we have things like natural monopoly. Natural monopoly is a market situation where cost of products are minimized by having a single firm produce the product. So let's take for instance electricity. So producing electricity, imagine if everyone says, okay, I want to start producing electricity for my house or for my company or my organization. The cost of producing this electricity is so much, right? So the government are going to spend like way, way, way too much to give everyone access to produce electricity. So say imagine you're going to give everyone access to the turbines, like you're going to give everyone access to the, machineries, equipment and all that. It's going to be so much cost. So how can the government reduce this cost? They say, okay, let's give one firm, access to supply this electricity to everyone, right? So we don't need to buy thousands of these equipment. Let's just buy like a few, where a particular firm just uses it to supply to every other person. So that's an example of a natural monopoly. Then we also have what we call geographic monopoly. This is a monopoly based on the absence of other sellers. So say we discover crude oil in Karshi, and somehow an individual sets up a refinery, right? And when the individual sets up the refinery, the individual also goes ahead to build a fueling station. So there's just one fueling station in Kashi. There's no other person, just the one fueling station. And then the crude oil was lock of location, right? We did not move the crude oil to Kashi. We just found it in Kashi. And then someone was able to, build a refinery and a fueling station, and nobody again is willing to do that. So this is a geographic monopoly because there's just one seller. No other person is willing to compete. There's just that one person. Then, thirdly, we have what we call technological monopoly. Now, this is based on the ownership of a method of production, scientific advanced method, or process. Under this, we have what we call patents. Now, this is granted by the government and it's exclusive rights to manufacture, use, or sell any new and useful invention. So, say for instance, you're producing a new type of medication, right? A new type of drug, and you don't want people to start creating counterfeits. So you can get a patent right by the government. So the government can say, okay, we've given you this patent. No other person can produce this drug. It's just your firm, just your own firm. No other person, no other organization can produce this drug. So that we don't start to have fake all around, right? It can also happen with technologies. So say for instance, you discover a technology that can help the government maybe to catch criminals, and you don't want other people to start duplicating this technology so that criminals don't lay their hands on it. So the government can give you a patent right. No other firm or organization can produce this technology. That's what patent is all about. So that becomes a monopoly because it's just you or it's just your firm that have access to produce it. We also have what we call copyright. So this one is usually given to art or literary works, and it's exclusive right of an artist to publish, sell, or reproduce for their lifetime plus 70 years, right? So you create a novel or a textbook, and you don't want people to start duplicating it everywhere, because then someone can say, okay, I'm the one that did it first, and start claiming rights to it. So the government can give you a copyright and say, okay, only you can publish this book. So in some textbooks or novels, you can see there's a letter C written on it, right, or with a circle. This means you can't duplicate the book. It's a copyright. So that's what technological monopoly is about. Now we have what we call government monopoly. Now this means government owns and operates a monopoly at national, state, and local level. An example of this can be public roads, right? They can decide to start a bridge, they can decide to stop a contract. It's a government monopoly, right? You also have things like railroads, you have things like electricity. So those are usually like government monopolies. Lastly, please, the pop-up quiz at the end of this slide will be marked and graded as your midterms. So I would give the deadline for submission on WhatsApp, and then you guys can do the pop-up quiz and turn it in as your midterms. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Do have a lovely day.